We have seen Robert Downey Jr. in the MCU for a good 11 years. People have forgotten that he had a career before then. After watching Oppenheimer, I had the biggest smile on my face leaving that theater because RDJ got a meaty role once again. Hey everyone, welcome back to Candid Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMXNJ Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Today I will be reviewing Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. This was part 2 of Barbenheimer for me. I went to a 2 p.m. screening downtown in my area because everything was sold out around me, so I had to find it in IMAX. Okay, I had to find it. There's no way I was gonna watch this if it wasn't on an IMAX screen because it's Nolan. And I have to talk about what has happened with Nolan for me in the past couple of years. I really like Dunkirk. Like, literally, look, I have a shirt here that says I saw Dunkirk in IMAX when I was working at the theater at the time. And I did not like Tenet. I didn't like Tenet. And I held on to that for some strange reason that, like, I just didn't like it, and that I don't know how Nolan's going to do now. But I was pleasantly surprised with the fact that Oppenheimer has been doing well, because Oppenheimer is not only my favorite movie of the year right now, but it's also one of my favorite, like, top 5 Nolan films. And I will break this down for you guys. First of all, I think that this one felt like a culmination of his work. Everything about it was perfected from his previous films. I think that he really enjoyed writing the script, and you can tell that he looked at it from 2 different perspectives, which I really enjoyed. And what I really liked was that he presented that at the very beginning. It's like, we're going to have 2 very different parts. We have fusion and we have fission. And I like that one was in black and white and one was in color. Subjective, objective, we have that. And we have a very strong parallel there. I liked how there were 2 hearings, essentially. They weren't trials. There were just 2 hearings running at the exact same time. And we get different tidbits of information. We get different sides of who Oppenheimer was. We get different sides of who Strauss was. So Oppenheimer is played by the lovely Cillian Murphy. Holy Lord, did he deliver. This man has always given 100% in every single supporting role that he has had, even a very minor role. But he always stood out no matter what he was in. Whatever Nolan put him in, you know Cillian Murphy was in that thing. And you remember him. Maybe it's for his piercing blue eyes. Maybe it's for his very chiseled jawline. Do we know? We don't know this, but mainly it's because he's a very talented actor, and I'm happy he got this leading role. I'm happy he got this meaty role. And as he said in a couple of interviews, it was a lot of work, and you can tell. It's an internal battle that he had. As a physicist, you want to make these advancements. You want to push that boundary. And what started as someone who, was adamant of getting this done because of the Germans, because of the Nazis, it was something that manifested in his brain. He planted that seed. And I think that visually, when you have, these little atoms and these particles coming together, and he's just sitting there thinking, those cuts, the editing in here is fantastic. You see how attached he is to physics. He's not just a human, okay? He is on another level entirely of how intelligent he is and how he sees things forming. And you visually got to see that. Nolan never thinks that the audience is stupid. They're able to pick up on this. And I really like that he did that visually. Again, it's layered. You have the visual storytelling. You have this beautiful, intricate script that details what's happening in his mind, what's happening in the world around him. And then eventually you have the thought of, like, what's going to happen in the future. You have that. We obviously know, but Oppenheimer doesn't know. So it's just this looming presence of dread that is just within the atmosphere constantly, because you know the aftermath, you know the outcome, and you see that Oppenheimer is struggling with this. Incredibly subtle, very nuanced performance from Cillian Murphy. And I really do hope he gets some award recognition for this, because there was so much that he was giving in this role. And it's really hard to play something like that, because there are so many things that are in motion. There's so many things that him building this, Oppenheimer building this, can set in motion. Going from, building this bomb for the Nazis specifically turns into something entirely different, because he was Jewish. It was more of a personal thing where, like, I want to get this done for, concerning what has been happening in the war. And then it shifts, when that doesn't happen. And now the bomb is being used in Japan. And that wasn't what he initially had planned, so you had that shift, and it was a seismic shift. And then you saw him thinking about it. You saw the gears turning within his mind. And I think that he just delivered that beautifully, Cillian Murphy. Just a phenomenal performance. My personal favorite of the year right now. He killed it. Then we go to the other side. We go to the other hearing. And Robert Downey Jr. plays Louis Strauss. Now, Strauss was the head of the Atomic Energy Commission. He was overseeing what was happening with this bomb, and he would be the direct link to the government as well. So he had a lot of things to contend with. More importantly, he saw how Oppenheimer was, how he truly was on the outside. So you saw different versions of Oppenheimer through the eyes of Strauss and the people, and then you saw him as he actually was. Very different than how Strauss had seen him. So here's the thing. We have seen Robert Downey Jr. in the MCU for a good 11 years. People have forgotten that he had a career before then. After watching Oppenheimer, I had the biggest smile on my face leaving that theater, because RDJ got a meaty role once again. And I was very, very happy for him, because he nailed this. One of my favorite performances of the year. I think that people forget how talented RDJ is, and then you see him in a role like this and you're like, damn, let me go back and watch his stuff before the MCU. I'm not saying he wasn't a great Tony Stark. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But if you go back and you watch a film like Chaplin, for example, which I highly recommend, you will see a very different caliber of acting and talent from RDJ. And that's what we saw in Oppenheimer. Fantastic work. So you see a different side of the states, of an organization, of a commission, and you see the shadiness, you see the corruption. I like that we saw both sides. It flowed perfectly, did not feel like 3 hours whatsoever. If anything, each hour got better and was more exhilarating than the previous hour. I loved it. I could have sat there for longer. It was fantastic work from Nolan. I think that this is his best script, and I want to buy the screenplay book. It is his best script to date. It really is. And like I had some other standouts that I noticed from the cast. This cast is wild. People were popping up left, right, and center, and I couldn't believe certain ones, especially considering what has been said about them. I was very surprised that Nolan used certain actors again, but for me, Matt Damon has had a great year with Air earlier this year. I think he's working with very strong directors that he can trust and he wants to learn from and work with. So Matt Damon as Groves was pretty good. I think that he had enough screen time for me to appreciate what he did, especially working alongside Cillian Murphy. I thought they had a great dynamic there. It was a very interesting dynamic, considering that obviously one's a soldier, one's a physicist. Again, the government and science mixing. That's the important takeaway here, because that's still incredibly relevant today. So you kind of don't have to look at it as back in the war days, but you can also adapt that and see that nothing has changed. Sure, technology has evolved. Sure, the government has somewhat evolved in a worse way, but you still have those arguments, especially with science, especially with the government, because the government has an ulterior motive, as we can see in Oppenheimer, which is so heartbreaking. There are a couple of scenes that have stayed in my mind. I think I watched this like 2 weeks ago now. I don't remember. Time is flying, but I watched it so long ago that I'm still thinking about certain things, certain images. The cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytema, fantastic work. These visuals are stunning, absolutely incredible. The practical effects to make the bomb, the sound design. Thank you, Nolan, the sound design. Okay, the 15 people that worked on that crew, fantastic work. We could actually hear the actors, which was a big issue in Tenet for me. Okay, the sound mixing, it worked incredibly well. I loved that they used the effects of the bomb throughout the entire film to show Oppenheimer's anxiety. That's really important. Those visuals are important. The sound, okay, is important because it takes you out of that moment with Oppenheimer. It's incredible because you're feeling what he's feeling. You really are. It's incredible work. So then on top of that, this whole movie would not work without Ludwig Göransson's work. His score, my favorite of the year. I have been listening to it day in and day out. It is fantastic. It's so incredibly soothing at the same time. He picks up on the underlying pressure of what the bomb can do for Oppenheimer and what it does to the rest of the world. And you can feel that throughout. Sometimes it's softer than normal. It's not really bombastic and loud, the drums and stuff like that. That's not what you get here. And it's very effective. So everything worked perfectly in this Nolan film. Everything that you've noted from previous works has been wrapped up in a little bow for 3 hours in Oppenheimer. It is incredible. This is my first 5 out of 5 this year. I can watch this on repeats like many of Nolan's films, but oh my goodness, Oppenheimer's fantastic. This is the one to beat this year for me. And I know Killers of the Flower Moon's coming out, but this for Nolan, I am just so happy for him. Obviously, I love Interstellar. I love The Dark Knight. I love Inception. I love Memento. But Oppenheimer's right up there. I think Alden Ehrenreich is so underappreciated, and I'm happy that he went toe-to-toe with RDJ. I really like that dynamic there. I think that Benny Safdie came out of nowhere. I did not expect him to really deliver. Even it was such a small role. I think Emily Blunt was fantastic in this, but she always is. I just think that, if there were awards recognition, I think Emily Blunt deserved it for what she did here. And then we have Florence Pugh, who played a very minor role, but again, her presence, this woman, I think she's a joy to watch on screen, and she was great. So there are plenty of strong aspects in Oppenheimer. I loved Oppenheimer. So I'm happy that I did Barbenheimer back to back. A lot of people said that I was going to enjoy Oppenheimer more than Barbie. And look, guys, here we are. Of course I would. Of course I would, which was hilarious to me. So please let me know in the comments below what you thought of Oppenheimer. Let me know in the comments below if you feel like this is one of your top Nolan films. I absolutely love this. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can always follow me over at AMX NJ Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Threads as well. And if you guys want to help me grow this wonderful community, you can find out ways to do that in the bio below. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.